A la Madrid. A la Madrid. Esto es el Real Madrid. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. What an incredible night at the Santiago Bernabeu. What an incredible night. The atmosphere last night was unbelievable. I mean, it's the Bernabeu now, after the refurbishment, is so loud. I mean, the atmosphere was off the charts. So let's talk about the Clásico from last night. It started, slowly. It was kind of sluggish at the beginning, but it ended on a really, really high note. And the last 15 minutes were just unbelievable. The atmosphere at the end was just absolutely incredible. But this culminates what's been a really fantastic week for the team. It's been really amazing. It's been heroic and exhausting, but incredibly successful. So let's talk about a few sort of broad themes, and then we'll talk specifically about the match, and we'll do player ratings as we typically do with La Liga matches. So thanks for joining me on the channel, and let's talk about this Clásico. Let's get started. Madridistas, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about the Clásico last night. This was, as I mentioned in my preview, had a slightly different feel with all the stuff going on, with the clubs in such different situations. The match started off, kind of sluggishly. I think Barça, I mentioned in my preview, Barça absolutely needed to win this match. I mean, there's no way. They needed a victory. They needed the 3 points to have any chance at all of trying to compete for La Liga. But they didn't seem to come out with that sense of urgency. I mean, it felt like they were, kind of playing an ordinary match. It didn't seem to me that Barça came out with any kind of special type of intensity, which I found a little bit odd. And then Real Madrid as well, throughout the first half, were playing, my uncle likes to use a term in Spanish called espeso. Espeso means, like thick and slow, like kind of like honey or molasses, something that is thick and kind of moves very slowly. They were playing in a very espeso way. There wasn't a lot of kind of crisp, sharp passing. Everything felt very labored, very slow. Some of the passing was kind of inaccurate. There wasn't a lot of movement off the ball. It just, it definitely felt to me like there was some fatigue from the 120 minutes in Manchester. It certainly felt that way. So, the first half, I think, just wasn't really great. One observation that I do want to make kind of thematically about the match is that it's really, really encouraging, I think, to see that Real Madrid has so many different ways of salvaging a match. If you look at sort of who the key players are in different matches, it changes all the time. I mean, we literally went from, in Manchester, we went from sort of Lunine and Rodrigo being the incredible heroes, to a match like last night where it's, Lucas Vázquez and I think Luka Modric, a 39-year-old Luka Modric. I mean, who would have thought? So it really is incredible to see that it changes all the time, and it's not always, we don't depend on one or two players the way that most other clubs do. I mean, we have so many different ways of solving matches, and it's really good to see because I think it makes us a bigger threat and gives us a bit more stability in terms of performance over the long term. I mean, in Barça, for example, last night, I can tell you, was entirely reliant on Yamal. I mean, Lamine is an incredible player. I mean, I have to say, one of the best young players I think I've ever seen, and he has so much composure, but he's so quick and so good on the ball. But Barça was absolutely reliant on Yamal for almost creating any type of danger. So it's kind of great to see that that's not the case with Real Madrid. Also, kind of thematically speaking, I mean, if we zoom out and we go back to the beginning of the season, I mean, I think it's absolutely amazing where we are because we started the season, we had basically no defenders. I mean, think about what happened. Militao gets injured, Alaba gets injured, which is a complete shock in terms of what we're going to do in defense. It turned out really well. But I mean, at the time, we thought we've lost our defenders. We have no natural number 9 because the big debate all summer was we need to bring in a number 9. And of course, we brought in Joselu, but Joselu is not the sort of world-class striker that you would expect a club like Real Madrid to have. So, we felt like, why aren't we bringing Harry Kane? Or, so we felt like we're starting the season with, no defenders, no number 9, and of course, missing Courtois, right? The best goalkeeper in the world that almost single-handedly won the 14th European Cup for us. So if you think about kind of where we were at the beginning of the year, and then think about where Barça was at the beginning of the year, because, despite all of their sort of financial troubles and kind of their weak form in recent years, they did manage to assemble a really, really talented side. And at the beginning of the year, they bring in Gundogan and João Cancelo, who, were at the time certainly playing a lot better than now, but they're very, very good players. And, João Felix, and of course you've got Lewandowski and, Rafinha, and of course, Yamal was sort of up and coming. But there were 2 or 3 matches at the beginning of the season where Barça looked really, really good. And I thought to myself, they don't own all of these players. Some of them are on loan, etc. But despite all of the difficulties, they've managed to put together a really, really good squad. So if you think about kind of at the beginning of the year where we were and where they were, it's sort of kind of shocking that things have reversed so much, because, it feels like things have returned to normal, right? Real Madrid winning and advancing in Europe, and, Barça losing and blaming it on everyone else. So things kind of feel like they've reverted back to normal. And this is one thing that I do want to mention thematically as well, that, we talked about in a previous video the cultural differences between Barça and Real Madrid. We're a very, we're all into accountability, and if we lose a match, the criticism begins and ends with us. I mean, we don't like to blame refs or the weather and it's just simply the way the club is. It's an institutional kind of characteristic. And I mentioned in my other video that, Barça, the whole media kind of narrative surrounding Barça, if you listen to YouTubers or the press that cover Barça, it's, the PSG match, they blamed on the ref, which I think is completely ridiculous. And last night's defeat, again, blaming it on the ref. So it's a very, very kind of, it's a big cultural difference, but, we've been living with this for a sort of very long time. But, Real Madrid's not like this. When we lose, we try to wake up earlier the following day and work harder and figure out what we can do better. But anyway, but listen, I just wanted to kind of mention those broader thematic things. But let's talk about the match itself. And I want to do player ratings. Like I say, I thought this was a slow match to begin with, kind of heavy, very slow, very sloppy. I think our passing was very sloppy. Barça looked a bit more organized and composed, although they didn't look particularly dangerous either. And I don't think they looked particularly sharp or quick either. But I think we felt a lot of fatigue. And of course, it took our backs against the wall, as always, to wake us up. And then in the second half, and with some of the changes, you really felt a new level of energy. And like I say, it finished on an incredible, incredible note. Now, let me give you my thoughts on sort of player ratings. So let's start with Lunine. Lunine, I'm going to say a 5. I didn't do player ratings for the Man City match. If I had, I would have given Lunine a 10, obviously, but. He went very quickly from sort of a 10 to a 5, because in this, he had a couple of good stops, admittedly, but he also made a couple of mistakes, and he just didn't feel particularly secure. There were a couple of balls that he sort of rejected. Instead of pushing them outward, pushed them into the middle of the box, which is a cardinal sin. And I think each of the goals, you can criticize Lunine for each of those 2 goals. So I think Lunine, I'm going to give him a 5. I think we have to be fair. He was heroic the other night, but I think last night he was just, pretty ordinary. Okay, Tchouaméni, I'm going to give Tchouaméni a 7. I think in one of the goals, in one of the Barca goals, he did make a mistake. But I do think he sort of defended. Again, he was playing sort of out of natural position, playing as center back. And I think worked very, very hard, defended very well. He was solid. He was good taking the ball out. So I think he had a reasonably good performance. not always the quickest player in the world, but I think he had a very, very solid performance and generally speaking, defended very well. So I'm going to give Tchouaméni a 7. Rudiger, I'm going to give a 7 as well. It's the first time that I sort of felt he looked a little bit tired. He just seemed a little bit slower in some of the sprints, and I don't blame him, because think about the work the guy has had to do, the past couple of matches. So he just, he seemed a little bit tired, but, Rudiger is Rudiger. He's always just a brick wall, and he's such a commanding presence. And look what he did to Lewandowski. I mean, he did to Lewa what he did to Haaland, 2 games in a row, which is to basically completely make him non-existent. So I think Rudiger had a really, really solid match. I'm going to give him a 7. Okay, Camavinga, playing out of position. Ancelotti put him in as left back, which he hadn't done for a while. But I'm going to give Camavinga a 6. Now, usually he's one of sort of my, I sort of love Camavinga and I rate him very highly. On this occasion, I'm going to say a 6. First of all, he had to cover the most difficult player in Barca, because, Yamal is by far their best player, and he's incredibly quick, very good on the ball, and very hard to defend. So we have to give Camavinga a bit of leeway. He did have to mark the toughest player in that Barca squad. And he did on a couple of occasions sort of, slip, and he kind of, the quickness of Yamal, he sort of tried to turn quickly and sort of slipped. I mean, there were a couple of situations where he was caught off a little bit. But I think generally speaking, he worked really, really hard and, put in a good performance. Don't forget that he had a yellow card. And I think from the moment you get that yellow card, it kind of conditions how aggressive you can be defending. So we need to be fair. I think he put on a good performance. Maybe not as spectacular as what we're accustomed to, but I think he played a good game. But I'm going to give Camavinga a 6. Okay, Lucas Vázquez is going to get a 9. I mean, this is what's so amazing. You take a player that doesn't play regularly, who comes off the bench. He's, we use him sporadically when we need to, but he always delivers. I mean, last night's performance, he was the best player on the pitch, which is an incredible thing to say. But Lucas Vázquez was amazing. He not only scored a goal and not only created a penalty, but also provided the assist in the last goal. So, I mean, he had an all-around incredible game, and he defended pretty well as well. But when your second-string right back gives you a goal, provokes a penalty, and an assist, I mean, we're talking about a 9, which could be a 10, to be honest. So he was man of the match for me. Okay, Toni Kroos. Kroos, I'm going to give Kroos a 6. In the goal, there's some criticism here in terms of the first Barca goal, the header that Lunine didn't reach. And Toni Kroos was in front of the striker, and people here are saying that maybe he could have done more. To be honest, it looked like a shove to me. It looked like Kroos was slightly shoved from the back. So I don't really blame him too much for that. So I think he had a reasonably solid game, but he wasn't the person running the midfield this time around. Modric was the one doing it. But he was less prominent than he usually is, but didn't do anything particularly wrong either. So I'm going to give Kroos a 6. It was a sort of a decent but not particularly flashy performance. Okay, Fede. I'm going to give Fede a 7. And look, defending, he was always, extremely aggressive. He's always very, very high energy. I think in the De Jong play where, De Jong got injured, I mean, that's an example of the kind of intensity. He came from very far back and just made a huge effort to try to get to the ball. So I think he played with a lot of aggression, a lot of physicality as usual. He certainly didn't mean to, if you look at the replay, he didn't mean to injure De Jong. And in fact, it wasn't even a foul as far as I'm concerned. But, he was very good in distribution as well. Some of his passes, his long passes were excellent. So I think Fede had a solid game, and I'm going to give him a 7. Okay, Luka Modric. I think this was exceptional. I'm going to give Luka an 8. This is amazing because, Luka has been used recently, kind of the last 20 minutes of a match, to kind of control the ball, in certain situations. But he came on the pitch from the beginning, played the entire 90 minutes, and he was fantastic. So it's just, I found it very surprising that he could hold up so long. But not only was he excellent throughout the whole match, but I think he even got better in the second half. I mean, like I say, very, very, very surprising. His passing was excellent. And I noticed him pressing a lot. I was surprised by his level of defensive sort of aggression, especially in the first half. He was running like crazy, pressing the ball. So I think Madrid had an exceptional performance, and it makes you scratch your head. I mean, the guy's 39, played the entire match, and was one of the best players on the pitch. So I'm going to give Luka an 8. Okay, Jude. I'm going to give Jude an 8. Now, you guys are probably getting bored of hearing me talk about his work rate, but I mean, it's just impossible to ignore. I mean, he just works his ass off the entire match. I mean, this guy does not stop running, pressing the ball. I thought his second half was particularly good. And, offensively, things were working out a bit more. His distribution, some of his dribbling, he was a bit more effective in the second half. And then, of course, he scores that crucial goal that, reminds us of those, game-saving goals that he gave us throughout the beginning of the season. And it looks like he's recovering his form. I mean, obviously, he was affected by that 2-game suspension. He was also affected by an injury. So he's kind of been coming back slowly, but it feels like he's coming back to sort of the old Jude. And what better example than that goal? I mean, that was the kind of last-minute game-saving goal, which is just so Jude. So I'm going to give Jude an 8. Okay, Vini. I'm going to give Vini a 6. This really wasn't his match. It just wasn't his match. I mean, he always puts in a lot of effort, but he felt really tired to me. I mean, I think a lot of his imprecision offensively, I think, has to do with fatigue. And there were a couple of plays, towards the end where before he was substituted, where he made that one run and missed the shot, but you could see him sort of holding his hips and kind of breathing very heavy. So I just think Vini was tired, and it showed. So he worked as much as he could, and he did miss a couple of sort of pretty good chances. So I'm going to give Vini a 6, mostly for effort, because he wasn't particularly fortunate in this match. So Vini's going to get a 6. Now Rodrigo's going to get a 5, and not to be cruel here, but Rodrigo, sometimes he saves the day, and he does that quite regularly. But sometimes this is one of those games where he kind of went missing for a while, and he just didn't participate for very long periods at a time. And then when he did get the ball, it was just one of those days where, just things don't work. Like the dribble doesn't quite work. Like something is just quite off and didn't click. So I also got the feeling from Rodrigo that he was tired. And it's just really difficult to ignore. 120 minutes away to Man City is just not something that is easy to recover from. So I think Rodrigo was a bit unfortunate, a bit absent. So I'm going to give him a 5. A couple of other things to mention. I would mention Brahim. I mean, Brahim, I thought was excellent. I'm not going to give him a grade because, I'm not sure he played long enough to actually be graded, but he's excellent. He always injects so much energy. I mean, the way that this guy dribbles past, he can pick up the ball in the midfield and just get past 3 or 4 players so quickly. He's just so electric, and his contribution, I mean, you noticed it right away. The second Brahim came on, we just felt more dangerous. We just looked more dangerous. So I have to mention Brahim is just such a wonderful threat to have. He's an ace in the back pocket every single time. And then one thing I want to mention about Ancelotti, this really irritates me, and I've mentioned it in other videos. He waits too long to make changes. I mean, we were, the whole crowd around us, we were sort of discussing our thoughts as the game went on, and we all agreed. I mean, the players looked tired, especially coming off that Man City match. Like, the players looked tired. It was obvious that we needed to make changes, and I think it just waited too long. So it's just something that I need to mention again that, really bothers me about Ancelotti sometimes. He makes the right changes. He just takes too long to make them. But anyway, listen, those are the thoughts on the Clásico. Like I say, it was just an unbelievable night. What can I say? This team, despite all of the obstacles, all of the hurdles, all of the difficulties, this team always manages to just crawl its way back into the light. Even the penalty kicks the other day with City, like, even that was a comeback because we started, Luka missed his first penalty. I mean, this team just never ceases to amaze me. Our ability to come back is just unbelievable. So I'm incredibly happy where we are. The Liga is pretty much, barring an alien invasion, I think La Liga is won. And the Champions League, I have high hopes because I just have high hopes. I mean, I think we can do this. So, we're going to take Bayern very seriously, but I think we can do this. So anyway, a phenomenal week for Real Madrid, and just something to celebrate. But listen, thank you for joining me on the channel once again, and thank you for all the comments and all that. I love you guys. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. And as always, a la Madrid.